Greetings. Hey, welcome to my channel. I felt the need to get gussied up, sit down, and talk to you about the Michael Jackson biopic. So, I went to see it last Sunday. I believe that was opening weekend. And I have to say, straight out the bat, that I loved it. First of all, backstory. I love Michael Jackson. I've been a Michael Jackson fan when I was younger. I remember saving my allowance so I could buy his book Moonwalker, and also saving my allowance to buy his VHS version of when he released the whole mini movie with Leave Me Alone and Smooth Criminal. Yeah, Smooth Criminal. Oh my gosh. I remember it was just he was such a huge part of my formative years, just in awe of his talent and charm. And I was just like everyone else who's a Michael Jackson fan, in love with Michael Jackson. I mean, he was just so adorable and just, like you said, whimsy, like he said he wanted to be. He gave us that whimsy, just all of the things. And it's so funny because, of course, as I came of age, I just like, I hear his music, but the fanaticism kind of died down, honestly. And so now I'm playing catch up because after watching the movie, I just got reignited with, like, man, I did watch the Jacksons, when they did the Jacksons miniseries back in, I think it was a while ago. I think it was like 2001, 2002. It was a while ago. Pretty old, but I think that was like a full picture, but it was called The Jacksons. So it was like not just about Michael. Anyway, fast forward. I love the biopic. I think they did a great job. I think a lot of people are criticizing it because they're expecting it to cover everything in exact detail and everything chronological. This is a piece of art. This is by the same people who produced the Queen biopic. It's not a documentary. It's not an this is meant to be an artistic celebration of Michael Jackson's life. Okay. And I emphasize celebration for those who are his fans. We want to celebrate him. We're all the generation who he impacted the most was the generation that was of his age group. We are grown ass people. Okay, so we already know about all of the different lawsuits and all of the things that come out, and people that come after you when you become famous. Because guess what? There are some pretty crappy people in this world, and that's just a fact. And some pretty crappy non-people. They look like humans, but they're not. They are other dark entities, but that's a whole other topic. So, anyways, that's not, to me, it's not necessary to put in this movie. I think those who are just now getting introduced to Michael may feel that way, but then there are some longtime fans that feel the same way too, but I think they're missing the point. This is an artistic rendition. If they want to do that, they can make their own movie. But the bottom line is that this is what Michael's estate approved. And when I hear estate, I always think, well, first of all, the estate means it's his family. And again, for those of you who have a big family, I come from a big family. And let me tell you something, irregardless to whatever went down and whatever arguments and yada, 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 that's his family. He loved his family. He loved his family so much. And that was also emphasized in the movie, that, that was something that sometimes his father, they tried to make it seem like Joseph was manipulating that. But I honestly think, based on, like I said, outside of the movie, all the interviews I've ever seen Joseph and his mom, Joseph definitely wanted all of his children to be included. He always wanted them to be included and be inclusive, but Michael wanted to do his own thing, which is understandable. He's an artist and he had a mission, for his art. So that brings me to that was my first point, was that this is a piece of art, and I think they did a great job for his fans. His fans are going to love the movie for the most part, because it is a celebration of his life. It's the high points. It's the highlight reel. It's what we want to see. We want to see see these concerts. We want to see our favorite songs. And it does cover up until from the Jackson 5 up until 1988. I mean, it does touch on a couple of things. What it did touch on, which is my second point, is that in this movie, this is the first time in any of the movies that I've ever seen about Michael Jackson or biopics, that touched on his creative process in the sense of him being a manifester. So Michael Jackson was a master manifester. He manifested his reality of being the greatest artist or, singer of all time. He literally is manifested that. But the point that I want to make about him manifesting being the greatest artist of all time is that everything comes with a price. Everything has a price. So, he didn't count the price that it will cost him to manifest this being the greatest artist of all time. Well, he was naive in the not understanding about life, that it's going to cost him his privacy and his sense of normalcy. Because if you're the greatest of all time, you are not normal. People are never going to perceive you as normal. And so, he didn't have the fortitude to understand that was the cost. Everything has a cost. Everything, every manifestation, every dream, every wish has a cost. It's like, you watching the movie, you rub the lamp and the genie pops out, you make your 3 wishes, and you have the cost that goes with it. There's a price to pay. And so, eventually that really, really was something that began to, that was a part of his, downward spiral, I guess. And the thing is too, that with Michael is, a master manifester. I love to see his creative process in the movie, where he does his affirmations and, he was opening himself up as a channel to receive inspiration from source, from God, from, the Most High, and to be that channel of music, which most artists do that. Because if you're an artist, you are under the muses, like they say the muses, you receive the muses, the inspiration. And he wanted to make himself that vessel of music, But again, what's sad is because of his extreme imagination, his extreme talent and perfectionism, was also the fact that he sacrificed himself. Like, he had a mindset of sacrifice in a sense that, he would practice and practice and practice until his feet would bleed. And, he injured himself so many times being fully immersed into it. And, it's like, to me, when I think of him, I think of, like a lot of dancers, where you practice at the expense of your body. You're willing to ruin your feet to give the perfect point, standing on your toes for the long period of time, and it's like, energetically, I think when you do that, you send a message to the universe that your body's not important to you, like your body is important as a vehicle only. And so eventually there's only so much that our bodies can take with that, so that was something that I was thinking about because I've been deep diving ever since watching the movie. And I'm like, so I'm basically taking a master class on Michael Jackson right now, because, I think of that, looking at all the different other documentaries and how he just pushed himself, and he had so many injuries. And then the other thing, the third thing was people complaining about the vitiligo and, why he never really, they didn't touch on, like, they didn't deep dive into the vitiligo story and how he was lightening his skin. Like, all of these things, if you're a true fan, you've already done your research, you already know. I mean, Michael Jackson, there was an interview, I forgot which interview it was, but there was an interview where Jermaine and his dad spoke up and said, well, he's not going to talk about it publicly, because at that time there was the big AIDS scare. And if you looked, if you even looked sideways, people were like, oh, you have AIDS, they treated you like you had the plague, or like you had freaking, like you were a leper. So, he was that would have definitely impacted his reputation to put that out there, because a lot of people are ignorant, especially at that time. They're not going to look stuff up. They're just like, oh my God, vitiligo, look at him. He's, there's something wrong with him. He's got AIDS. And so, yeah, he decided to keep that secret. They hid a lot of the pictures that are now coming out where you could actually see just how impacted his body was. I just recently found out that he had lupus. And so that's a severe autoimmune disease disorder. And, and again, it is heightened because of neglect of yourself. When you're dealing with a lot of stress, you're dealing with a lot of not taking care of yourself, not getting enough sufficient rest. These things, vitiligo and lupus, get heightened, they get worsened. And so, he did neglect himself a lot. Not to mention his diet was not the greatest. I mean, he didn't even, he didn't drink a lot of water. He loved orange juice and Kentucky Fried Chicken. I mean, he was pretty much vegetarian, but he didn't eat beef and pork, but still it was it's not like he ate a lot of vegetables, they said, either. So, all these things factored in when you do the research behind the scenes. But I say all that to get back to the movie. When I tell you Jafar, his nephew, who played Michael Jackson, was phenomenal, top tier, just blew me away. I want to make this point. Jafar was not just an impersonator. Okay, he was not just impersonating Michael. Jafar studied for 2 years. He would read books in Michael's voice for 2 years to train his voice to automatically sound like Michael's. All of the tactics and techniques that he did were actors' techniques. These are the techniques that people teach at Juilliard, and my boy is doing it instinctively, okay? That's number one. Number two, this is his nephew. There's something called epigenetics. You see, your veins, epigenetics. He has Michael in his blood, literally. He's in his blood. They have genes and bloodlines and all of that stuff. You're basically looking at a version of Michael playing Michael, is how I look at it. Not to take Jafar out of it, because he is himself as Michael. And again, this is his estate giving a tribute to their loved one. At the end of the day, this is their loved one. Before he belonged to any of us, even as his fan, he belonged to them. He belonged to his children. He belonged to his mother and his father. Before anybody, before the media, before us as his fans, before anything, he belonged to them. And so if anybody has a right to put something out and bless it, it's them. The other controversy following that is about Janet Jackson, because a lot of people are like, well, Janet Jackson wasn't involved. As far as what's really going on, it's all hearsay. We don't know. Until the truth actually comes out, we actually know exactly what is going on. It's all hearsay. I mean, families have spats all the time. She has her own career. It's not worth it to speculate. Yes, I would have loved to see a baby Janet. Yes, I would have loved to see, the parts of her crossing over. And who knows, they are making a part 2. She may change her mind. I mean, one of the things she did publicly say is that she does support her nephew, but that she doesn't, she didn't want to participate with the project. But that was it. She didn't say why. She didn't delve into why. And to be honest, she doesn't have to. It's about Michael. It's not about Janet. And yes, she is a part of it. But at the end of the day, it's not about Michael. I mean, it's not about Janet. It's not even about the other brothers. This is a Michael Jackson biopic. It's about him and who he was and his struggles. I love the way Jafar brought in also the emotional pain from that Pepsi incident. I love the way he did it. I honestly, I don't get emotional like that, but I just I felt it. He is really such a naturally talented actor, period, point blank, full stop. Okay. I'm just in awe that people go to school to learn the shit that he's naturally doing and teaching himself. Yes, he worked with a lot of coaches. I mean, some of the best coaches in the industry, but you still have to have it to do it. Because, you could work with coaches. Because I know I've seen it. I've seen people work with coaches and, you ain't got it. That don't mean you have it. You know what I'm saying? It just means that you worked with coaches and you could see the difference. And he honestly does have it. He has a great career ahead of him if he chooses to pursue acting. He said he wanted to go into directing. Jafar was saying he's not sure if he wants to do singing after, the full process of the Michael Jackson. That may change. He's obviously, like you said, a Jackson. So he's very talented, multi-talented. He's a triple threat, quadruple threat. He can do whatever he wants to do. But acting, damn right. Damn right. Come for him. I'll have a conversation with anybody about it, because this man, he did a lot of the processes to make this more than just um being him as an impersonator. So I wanted to say that. I think that was needed to be said. So the other thing that I wanted to say was with Michael, in the biopic, the affirmations, him being a master manifester, that was so excited to see that. That really said a lot to me. That said so much to me and to all of us who are dreamers, just them including that. And that, again, was part of Jafar's influence and recommendation. Jafar, and I believe Michael's son, Prince, they wanted to bring that out after Jafar read all of his notes and his diaries, and went into all the different studios he used to work in and see all of the different processes and stuff. I think that was really important for those who are in the master class of Michael Jackson, because yes, if you're a master manifester, you absolutely can manifest beyond your wildest dreams, and that's what that taught me. But him also sacrificing himself taught me that, you have to be conscious of also the price that is going to be paid. You decide what the price is that's going to be paid, which brings me to the other lesson that I got with Michael Jackson. And so, like I said, after watching the movie, I'm so glad that they greenlit the part 2. I mean, it's already breaking box office. Of course it is. It's going to continue to break box office rules. It's like my children are coming up, and now they're like, they've known of Michael Jackson, but now it's like it's burning this new discovery, them learning and looking at all his music and all his videos, and becoming real true fans. So he's getting a new generation, because that's what he manifested to be a timeless of all time. So there will be people in space that know Michael Jackson, you know what I'm saying? And as they should. He was an artist. He was a true artist. The other thing I wanted to talk about was his chart. So Michael Jackson, I had to look up his chart, of course. I am an astrology nerd, and so I was like, okay, what is his chart? Because I don't remember ever pulling his chart, looking at his chart. And so sure enough, what was interesting to me about Michael Jackson's chart, his big 3, he's a Virgo. Of course, we all know he's a Virgo. So he's a perfectionist. He's analytical, a little way too hard on himself, which we know, reading his book and how he was, always criticizing his own looks and things like that. But he definitely had that imaginative side, because he was a Virgo sun, but he had a Pisces moon and a Pisces rising. So those 3 are very powerful placements, because that's in this 3-dimensional world that we live in, we are most impacted by the sun, the moon, and by our sun and our moon. And so, and of course the rising, which is the stars. So we're most impacted by that in our 3D experience. So those placements are very important as far as I'm concerned. And so the Pisces aspect of it is like, wow, yes, I can see it. First of all, that smile of his, that's a Pisces rising thing, honey. That smile just can charm the paint off the walls, okay? And the imagination, the whimsy, the sense of, wanting to give his audiences an escape. Hello, that's Neptune, that's Pisces all the way. And that's what he wanted to do, and that's what he did with his imagination and as an artist. So I thought that was pretty phenomenal. And the connection between his chart and Jafar's chart, Jafar is a Leo, and Michael Jackson had his Venus, and his Venus is in Leo, and his Mercury was in Leo. And so Jafar also has his Mercury in Leo. So they both have that expressive, bold, presence, artistry, king, regal, the king energy, the king of pop. I saw that connection. I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. Jafar, I forgot his other placements. Oh, he has a Capricorn moon. So he's definitely going to be more grounded. But, Capricorn is, Elvis was a Capricorn. So let me just say that. But anyway, Jafar, he's a Leo, and that's why you see him. He's very grounded. He's very, he's not afraid of hard work either. That's one thing. Virgos and Capricorns, baby, they're not afraid of hard work, honey. Hard work is maybe afraid of them, because they're gonna put in the work and overwork, basically. They workaholics. So that's that's amazing, because the Jafar even messed up like his feet, practicing 6 hours a day, learning to move exactly like his uncle. And his uncle, learned these over years. So that, like I said, this boy, I can go on and on how amazing a talent he is naturally. I mean, obviously it's in his genes. Like I said, the epigenetics is real. Look it up, Google it. But I'm proud of him. But like I said, their synastry is there. So they have that Leo conjunction, because Michael did have that. Michael had his Mars in Taurus. And so that's where his stubbornness would be sometimes. And he definitely held grudges. He definitely held grudges about stuff. They mentioned the Prince thing a lot. Yeah, there was a little bit of competition between them. I remember back then, but they're totally different. They had, everybody in the 80s was doing the androgynous look. Everybody in the 80s was doing the androgynous look. Everybody in the 80s was doing like the rock with the guitar. Everybody had that element that was 80s music, so that was mass appeal. But Prince was a different kind of an artist. His process for writing was different. They respected they had extreme respect for each other, because they both knew that they were extremely unique and legendary in their approaches to doing things. It's just that Michael had that international reach. Prince, very well known, very famous, obviously they're both geniuses. Okay? But they both have respect for each other. As a matter of fact, when Michael Jackson passed, Prince, he canceled the rest of his dates on his tour, and they said he was holed up in his room in mourning for about 2 weeks, 2 full weeks. He was just devastated. Not just that was his peer, his peer in terms of the geniuses from the 80s, the legends from the 80s, but he was a friend, and they did, they had a lot of respect for each other. But I thought it was funny, that scene. There's a scene where he talks about, spoiler alert, but there's a scene where he says, like, I don't want Prince to get the inspiration, I want to get it, that kind of thing. It's funny, but they did have like a little competition, but Michael was in a class of his own, and so was Prince. But I just thought that was cool. The synastry between Jafar and Michael was just, very interesting, that Leo connection. Fun fact, Joe Jackson's a Leo too. So, but people like to demonize him, because Joe Jackson was definitely abusive. At that time, a lot of the parents back then would beat the children. I definitely got butt whippings. That was how it was. But with Michael, it was more than just beatings. The way, some of the things that he did and said was extreme. Joe Jackson was definitely an abusive dad. But my other commentary on that is, again, as someone who believes in the power of self-development, the power of evolving yourself and being your best self and things like that, is I noticed that with Michael, he was locked into that story. Like, that became his identity. I didn't have a childhood. My dad abused me. And, the thing is, when it became his identity. He became that, he leaned on that. That was his crutch, and so I feel like, because that was his crutch, that represented a weak point for those who were evil, who wanted to target him to find their way in. Because, because he was abused, he would not abuse a child. He said that several times, like, I would rather slit my wrist than hurt a child. And so, the evil people were like, oh, this is the perfect thing that can make him, break him down. They wanted to break him down. They hated that he built so much power for himself, because of his skill and talent and basically his calling. And it was like, that was a perfect way in because of that. And his other thing was the need for validation, because, like I said, in Moonwalker, I remember when I was reading the book, and I do remember the passages about how he was so devastated about his acne. He was so devastated. He would cry and cry and cry. And when he looked in the mirror, and, Joseph would make fun of him about it, how his mom would console him and, try to console him about it and things like that. But it was just like, he always looked in the mirror and never saw his own beauty. He never really built up that self-esteem. And I think that also, that can attract that energy. So it's like, accidents don't just happen. I think part of the reason why they happen is because he believed that his face was worthy of that happening. Because I just found out, I didn't know this either. I just found out from another influencer who was talking about it, another fan, and he talked about how, and I'm sorry, I can't give him credit because I don't even remember. I've been looking at so many videos, I don't even remember who said it. But it was this not from me. I learned that he originally broke his nose with his Off the Wall album, and when he broke his nose, then he felt like it never was right, and so he would. That's why he had so many surgeries, because it was like the first surgery wasn't right, and then the second surgery was better, but then he had another accident, and then it was like, so he just kind of got looped into that. But a big part of it was his own low self-esteem. And so that was another lesson in the Michael Jackson masterclass, is about the self-esteem. Like, he did give his advice. I think it was Brett Ratner. He filmed him, one of his final, like interviews before, before 2009, but it was close to like 2007, 2008 or whatever. Anyway, Brett Ratner, it's a message to the dreamer, but he said that, he goes, believe in yourself like crazy. He said, the other message that Michael Jackson said was, aside from believing yourself, he said that, study the greats and then become greater than the greats. And, so I just thought that was interesting, but the self-esteem part of it was also part of his undoing, because he was so wrapped up in needing validation from people and wanting to be loved by the world, not realizing how crooked and evil people were. One of the other things Michael Jackson would always say is that, he harped on that scripture where Christ said, be like the little children, have a spirit like the little children. So, he harped on that scripture, and it's like, yeah, children are innocent. Children are the future. However, their parents, they have parents, and some of these parents are evil. They will sell their own children. They will sell their own soul. So of course, they exploited him. And again, this is where that not understanding the price of things came in for him. And so after the whole allegations, and he was found innocent of all the charges and everything like that. I was reading and watching the interviews about, how he got looped into his drug abuse, taking so many prescription drugs. He couldn't sleep. He was dealing with insomnia and just basically all the pain, the pain and suffering from his body. And he felt like the world turned on him, and they did. The world really did turn on him, because that's how people are. People are gullible, and the spin machines spin, and people just buy right into the bullshit, because that's what people are, like sheep. That's what Christ said. The people are like sheep. They're sheep without a shepherd. They follow any shepherd right off the cliff. And so, yeah, even people who are true fans, for me, I never believed he did. I never believed he did. I thought, I did used to buy into the fact that he was weird, but now that I'm older, I understand he was eccentric because he was an artist. But I never felt like, I always used to say he didn't make the best choices, is what I used to say. It's like, that's not the best choice. First of all, the kids hanging out there all the time, the parents don't need to be dropping their kids off. I don't care how much you trust me. Come and get your kids and take them home. Even though like people like, oh, they slept in his bed. He said nobody slept in my bed. But his room, they were like, they may have slept in the room or something and did camping or whatever, but his room was the size of my house, his bedroom. So it's like people, but he also, another thing, I think it was Macaulay Culkin even said that he doesn't do a good job of explaining himself, and he didn't. And he didn't have like the coaching. He just didn't have a lot of good people around him. And the other thing, like I said, back to the drug abuse, I feel like the last 24 hours, with that freaking doctor that the London promoters sent over to help him, that just kept giving him whatever drugs he wanted and mixing all kind of drugs in his system and just pumping him full of, the amount of drugs was so crazy. And when you look at him, even when I watched This Is It, the way he was talking, like his tone of voice, and like there was a part where like the guy was trying to tell the people who were practicing about the lights and when to cue and everything, and he was like, we're sizzling, but the way he was talking was like kind of slurred, and it was really heartbreaking because you could just see the damages. I wish he had a guru. I wish he had someone who was more holistic and could work with him through meditation and healing his past life and doing herbal medicines and things like that. I wish he had that journey, because I know he would still be here if that was the journey that he was on, because he was already into, because I also found out, and what made me look into it was when you start the movie, when you go see the movie, it starts out with him jumping up and down, and I'm like, that is a Robbins, a Tony Robbins thing, when you jump up and down to get energy, and he would do that, and I was like, was he a Tony Robbins? So I looked it up, and yes, he had gotten back then the whole set of the Tony Robbins tapes and books, and he was heavy into the self-development with Tony Robbins, and he became good friends with Tony Robbins, introduced Tony Robbins to Quincy Jones. And so, so he was on that journey, and I wish he had have followed it deeper into the journey of spirituality. I think that would have saved him, because he would have understood that he didn't have to rely on so many outward things. He would have been able to reflect inward, and also know how to rest himself in between, rest in a way of not just withdrawing because you're hurt and you're licking your wounds, or you're hurt and you're devastated, you're healing because of time. There's healing with intention, and then there's healing with time. And I think that's what happened with him, is that it was just he pulled back after he won the case where, he was cleared of all the charges. He didn't integrate the lessons. He wasn't intentional about the lessons. It was more just heartbreak. And that's why he went the route of the drugs, because it was to numb, that feeling of wanting to numb, back in the day, I understood that with drinking. It was I just need something to take the edge off that, when I used to drink. And it was when people go to extremes with drugs and alcohol and prescription drugs, they want to take that edge off. They want to just, get through with something to numb the pain. And so that's what he was dealing with. And I just wish he had someone that could kind of bring the modalities that would really numb the pain, through helping him to learn to meditate and, have plant medicines that would be not only healing, but also they will help you with the angst and the pain, but at the same time help you get greater awareness and healing. And I just wish he had that in the last part of his days, because he would still be here with us. And yeah. So anyway, listen, the movie's phenomenal. I had to come on here. I had to put my 5 cents in about the biopic. I love Michael Jackson. Wherever he is, because the other part of it before I end this video is that there are theories that he faked his death. And I'm going to be honest with you. If he did, I don't blame him. Out of all the people that they, big fans are oh, Elvis faked his death, Tupac faked his death, because we didn't want them to die because we love them. But out of all the people, if they were to fake their death, Michael Jackson deserved to, because he was in fear for his life at the end. When he purchased when he purchased half of Sony, and the way that people were coming after him, and he was making a lot of interviews saying that Tommy Mottola was evil and people are out to get him, and he was in fear for him and his children's lives. So I wouldn't be mad at him if he did decide to fake his death. I mean, it's pretty easy to do, especially if you have a lot of money. So it's not highly impossible. And people are oh, you're just being crazy. I mean, yeah, I can be. I'll own that. I don't care. But at the same time, it's not that far-fetched when you think about it, because it's very easy to do. And it would finally give him the privacy and the peace that he craves, that he craved so badly. The price that he paid. He's given us enough music. He's given us enough talent for many generations, So yeah, if he did decide to do that, and he outsmarted them and faked his death, I wish him the best. If I was his close friend, I wouldn't tell a soul either. I wouldn't say a word either. Why? Because he, of all people, deserved to finally have some kind of peace and privacy and, anonymity. Because yeah, there was a lot of theories. There's a theory about he has the ghost, that Ghost mini movie that he did, and how he did the prosthetics. And he would go out a lot during that time frame. He would go out in public a lot in disguise. And there was another story I came across with Akon. Akon talked about how he went to the movies with Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson was like, okay, I'm going to meet you at the theater, and I'm bringing a friend of mine. So Akon goes in, he sits down, and someone comes in, and he's like, oh, he thought it was the friend. So he's like, oh, hey, what's up? And so he's calling Michael like, yo, where are you? And then he hears the phone ring in the friend's pocket, and he turns and he looks, and Michael's like, hey, Akon. And he's like, what? He did not recognize him. And then a step further beyond that is when they came out of the theater, people recognized Akon. So Akon's fans came up and they were like, oh my God, can I get a picture? And Michael Jackson was offering to take pictures of the fans with Akon. And Akon's in his head like, oh my God, like if these people knew who was taking their picture. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he craved that so desperately. His soul needed to be normal. Even though he manifested not being normal. You know what I mean? So like I said, either way, he's at peace. Either way, I feel like he definitely blessed whatever this movie was. It's going to be a lot of money for the estate. That's what people are forgetting too. Like, oh, well, it's going to the estate. Part of the estate is his family. And you can say what you want about his family, but Michael loved his family. And included in his family is his children. So shut the heck up about all of that, okay? I would rather give that than put more money in these stupid executives' pockets. You know what I mean? So either way. Now, footnote, I forgot the actor's name that played Joe Jackson. Nia Long ate that up as far as being his mom. I think that every casting was so on point. That was also jaw-dropping. I'm talking from Berry Gordy to Suzanne Summers to Quincy Jones. Like, every person cast, the resemblance, the mannerisms, all of it. They ate it up, and I love it. I think it's just phenomenal. It's a great piece of art. It's a great walk down memory lane. It's a celebration for those who are his fans, who get to celebrate his music, his artistry. And it's a master class in what to do and what not to do when you're becoming a legend, and even just as an artist and as a dreamer. There's just so much in there, so much meat that, his life was a lesson and a testament to. So, if you're out there and you're still alive, enjoy the hell out of your life. And don't say nothing. You walk around in surprise and just enjoy your life. Don't feel bad, And if eventually you want to come out that you're still here 15 years from now, who knows? I don't know. But either way, and if you're not, rest in peace, rest in power. Thank you for all the gifts that you gave us, Michael. Thank you for, the lessons too, because, it takes, we learn from the mistakes of the greats. It's a masterclass for all of us. Like I said, for all of us who are dreamers. So just wanted to share, come on here and put my hat in the ring about the Michael movie, the Michael biopic. Love me some Michael Jackson. Just ate it up all across the board. Can't wait for part 2. All of the other stuff, all the other, this should be in this should be in that, baby. I ain't got none of that to say, because honestly, I can't complain. For me, for what I was looking for, it's a piece of artwork. His family blessed it. His mom blessed it. His nephew, so talented. Baby, I ain't got nothing else to say. I think that you have to go see it if you haven't seen it. I will be seeing it again. And I mean, enough said. It was just wonderful. Loved it. Rest in power to you, Michael. Always love you. Sending props to you wherever you are, whether you faked your death or you are in your castle in heaven. Thank you for the lessons that you brought. And if you do get reincarnated, your true fans are going to know. We're going to see it and we're going to know. So anyway, peace and blessings to everyone. Much prosperity to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. If you stayed to the end, thank you. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe if you're not a fan. I have a lot going on my channel. I'm just reposting because I took a break for a minute. And, I'm back and I do what I want to do because it's my channel. And, we have creative freedom to do what we want to do. And like I said, I love to do tarot readings. I love to do all kinds of stuff on my channel. So take a look around. I like to show local whatnots going here and there to the local areas of South Florida, to Orlando, giving you a different kind of a point of view rather than the tourist traps. So like I said, please support your girl. Hit the like and subscribe button. Hit the bell notification so you do get notified when I do post a video. And thanks so much for tuning in. And nothing but love to everybody. Peace and blessings.